You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-commerce strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode. Today's episode is sponsored by Centra and Grab, and more about them later. We are doing one of our monthly catch-ups, which seem to be popular. You obviously like listening to me and Paul ramble about what's going on in the e-commerce industry. So we're going to focus in on what's happened predominantly in July, but also coming into early August. So we're going to look at like market mood. Paul's going to do a roundup on paid media signals, what his team's seeing, what the benchmarks, etc. We're going to look at the key new tech that we found that we recently did a podcast on, and then we're going to look at some interesting stories and news from the industry. So, Paul, do you want to kick off? Like, what from a market mood and like general update point of view? What have you seen? What are you hearing out in the market?
Yeah, I think we obviously talk about it quite a bit, but I think it's interesting that I think there's definitely some bigger, and this is from a replatforming perspective, which is obviously a lot of both of our backgrounds and where this podcast kind of came from. But yeah, I definitely think there's some bigger ones, some bigger projects being kicked off and people opening up budgets and getting business cases signed off, etc. The only one thing I would say is right now, my view is that 95% of those replatforming projects are going to Shopify. And I think it's an interesting time for Shopify projects as well, because I feel like there's quite a lot of projects that are maybe on the lower end of the budget scale. And I do feel like, I don't know how I feel about that from like a market perspective, in that there's almost an element of like the cost of these projects is coming down. And I think there is a risk around Shopify. It's the kind of, I guess, like the economics around the platform continue to come down for the like agency ecosystem. But overall, I mean, I'd say like it's more positive than it has been over the last kind of few quarters. I think, the only thing I would say is Shopify is pretty dominant, apart from like a few kind of more niche builds going with some of the other platforms. I don't know what you'd say.
Yeah, we've said this already. Shopify's a new Salesforce, basically. Different platforms, different ecosystems, but in principle of like market domination and the way that they go to market, they are not as people, but in terms of go-to-market marketing strategy, they are aggressive and they are very dogged in what they say about the platform. And obviously some of that we take with a pinch of salt, for example, being named as a B2B leader and having the best TCO for every business everywhere. Always take marketing with a pinch of salt. But they are, with what they've done with their big releases, editions, and with the features that they're dropping and the rate they're dropping at, I think they've turned the mindset. They're starting to turn the mindset in enterprise, which is the big difference for me in the last couple of quarters, which is obviously what their big strategy was, is to go after and dominate enterprise. And before, it wasn't really taken seriously. Now, bigger businesses I speak to, even though I'm not involved in those projects, Shopify is on the table. They have a big challenge internally, and I think this is where they're still to catch up in terms of like sales enablement and the processes to support and properly work effectively with agency partners at an enterprise level. So I think that's going to be an interesting one. But yeah, I would agree that speaking to agencies, the mood is a little bit more positive in Q2 than it was Q1. People I'm speaking to, I'm not going to name any names for obvious reasons. They've seen an increase in inbound leads. So the inbound pipeline is becoming healthy again. Last year, the inbound pipeline was pretty strangled. A lot of focus was on retention and trying to get greater recurring revenue streams out of existing clients. But now we're seeing agencies I'm speaking to see more coming in. They're feeling more positive about like the conversion of those leads into actual projects. Multi-brand, multi-platform agencies are saying Shopify is dominant, as you're saying. But actually, there's been a good surge for other platforms. I know Centra doing well, BigCommerce. So it feels like the overall ecosystem is in a slightly more buoyant place for new projects, and there are some big chunky ones coming through.
Grebin create digital flagship stores for iconic brands of today and tomorrow. We are the #1 Centra agency in the world, with more than 50 Centra implementations to date. We are also e-commerce design specialists, platform and tech partner agnostic. Try our new e-commerce design subscription. Visit grebin.com.
So yeah, I guess that's what I've seen. Anything else to add? Any things that you're picking up from the agencies you work with?
I don't think so. I mean, the one like I was kind of touching on there, I still think I think Shopify's kind of position is something that I don't think that has ever been seen before in the commerce world. And I think that piece around the economics of a build and a retainer, I think it is changing all the time, particularly on the retained front. So I think in terms of agencies, I think there's a lot of movement towards new services and new ways of driving revenue from a client beyond just new features. Because I think that line is coming down personally. So the average cost per new feature, in particular. So I think, I think that's an interesting thing, but we could definitely do an episode on that. Just one episode on that. But I think it's an interesting point, that one.
I do think the industry in general has a responsibility to be stronger in educating clients about the expected costs that come into projects on SaaS that are maybe hidden because the core platform costs and the build costs are significantly lower. But there is inevitably always, in every project I've ever worked on any SaaS platform, there is what I call expected additional cost for third parties and apps to fix something. So promotions is a great example. Okay, well, actually, now we've got into the weeds in technical discovery. Your free gifting requirements are beyond what the native is. You're going to have to use a third party app, and this is what it's going to cost per month. There's always a few £1,000s a month extra cost at a decent mid-market size, so a 10 million plus business that creep in, which I know you do the same. We always budget for it and say, look, here's a contingency for apps, and we think there's going to be probably an additional X thousand per month coming in that will end up at the end of discovery. But I think wider ecom industry needs that kind of, that communication to understand that the cost model will be lower, but there will be more cost than an overzealous salesperson would let you believe. What else in market? Do you know what we're about to do one, because we don't want this to sound like it's a Shopify love it, and we're trying to be balanced on this, but this is where the market's moving, so we can't deny it. And I'm also a big fan of Shopify in many, many ways. But BigCommerce, interestingly, they've got their next big thing, which is they're basically following suit with Shopify. They launched 2 big product releases each year. Last was in April. Current one is pitched now. They've got the Austin, Texas big summit going on at the moment. So we are recording a podcast later this week with one of their product leads and with leading agency Codal, and we're going to talk about what's come out of that latest release, because it is interesting. They've landed some big brands this year, like sports shoes. So BigCommerce, despite what some people might think, are doing well. They've acquired a lot of massive business in the US around B2B, but in B2C, they've got a couple of marquee brands coming in, which is good. So we're going to be looking at what their changes are on composable, international, B2B, checkout optimization, and they're pushing heavily on AI, their new suite of AI tools, which all platforms are. The other thing I thought was quite interesting, Paul, I know you know the Patchworks team well, and there are other integration layers. Team platforms like High Cohesion are doing some really cool things and picking up good clients. But I thought what was quite cool, and this is topical because I'm working with Patchworks on a Shopify project at the moment, is they've launched Blueprints. So they have integrations where you have connectors that you can pick up between a NetSuite and the Shopify, a NetSuite and a BigCommerce. But they've launched Blueprints, which are basically standardized processes and flows between those two systems. So instead of having to build out the flow from scratch in their new flow builder interface, there's a pre-built flow, which I think, listen to Jim Herbert, the CEO's post, there is configuration. It's not going to be 100% for all businesses, but their aim is to get 80% of the core flows done, and you can then tweak and configure, which will speed up your integrations work in a project. I thought that was a really cool announcement as well. Centra is the only commerce platform built exclusively for fashion brands. Over 300 fashion brands run on Centra, including icons like Paul Smith, Jeff, Avenue, and Nudie Jeans. Centra solves business logic challenges for fashion brands like no other platform, and they are on a mission to help you scale up rapidly, globally, across all online and offline channels. Take your fashion brand global, faster, further, stronger today.
Yeah, I think that ever since Jim's joined, and I don't know whether you attribute it to Jim or whether there's like, a really strong like product or, tech guy in there as well or whatever. But I think they've done a lot of really good stuff. I think their go-to-market's been like ridiculous. Like the change in go-to-market has been amazing. And I think they've just generally like modernized the whole approach massively. So yeah, I've been super impressed with that positioning and some of the stuff they've done.
Yeah, I think what's happened is Jim is such a smart strategic guy that he's come in and put in a structure and a vision, but they've got really strong people like Connor leading up from a CTO point of view, and they've got really good, they've brought in some really smart people into the sales, and they've got a really good sales team at the moment. So I just think their go-to-market and their engagement process with clients is sharpened up, and that's what's made them a valuable ally. I think they'd slightly lost their focus on that client success and the client engagement piece, and that's come back sharper. So I think it's overall it's that strategic direction that Jim's helped bring in, and then it's the people they've got within the teams that are executing at a really good level. I've definitely seen the quality of output, and also the platforms improve massively. You put a note about Shopify acquiring Channel 8, which I haven't looked into that nearly as much. So do you want to talk people through that? What is that and what does it mean?
Yeah, so Channel 8, it does quite a lot, but it's quite back office focused, but it's focused around the fulfillment and inventory side of things. But yeah, I think this is particularly interesting. What I think Shopify acquired a lot of businesses and bought a lot of strong talent, and Channel 8 had a really good reputation. It's a really good brand, so I think that's a good move. But I do think, again, this is a bit of a signal of intent for Shopify. I personally see them wanting to take as big a piece of the pie as possible, or the whole pie at some point. And I think, they will look to operate as like a broader kind of operating system. And I think, this area they've obviously strengthened a lot in the platform, but or on that kind of more like the order management side and stuff like that. But I think this would in theory be a good acquisition if they were looking to do more around that side and the back office side.
So the expectation being that becomes integrated into the core platform over time.
Well, it's interesting. The acquisitions they've done have been more like they've kind of rebuilt stuff, but they've hired essentially or acquired a team to go and do that. So I think it'll be one of the two.
Right. Okay. Interesting. I shall look into that in more detail. Let's move on to paid media signals. Not something I'm closely involved in because I moved away from doing digital marketing a while ago, but you obviously have your paid media team that are working with a lot of businesses on this side. What are you seeing? What are the key outtakes for people?
Yeah, so I also am not super close to paid media, and I do avoid it to an extent, but it's the bigger side of our business. I know I've said this section is actually a bit more like general kind of benchmarks. So we have around 50 to 60 brands in a kind of data warehouse, and we benchmark different KPIs and metrics. Overall July was fairly good month. So it's just under 8% up year on year for revenue, which wasn't as strong as June, but it was still pretty good. And there was a lot of kind of sale activity and things like that in June. EU markets performing particularly well, which is interesting, and the fastest growing markets for our clients include Italy and Spain. So Italy's been a standout market for our clients year to date. UK is performing particularly badly at the moment, and that's something that I've had some of our bigger clients raise as well. So I think that's definitely a bit of a trend outside of our clients, which again are predominantly fashion and lifestyle. And then the US is doing a bit better again. So the last 2 or 3 months, it's been trading much better versus the start of the year where it wasn't doing well at all. So I don't have much in terms of benchmarks for this episode, but I'll make sure I get some better data for the next one. But the only thing I would say is like a lot of our clients are pushing more budget into the US again, where it's performing better. And then overall, Meta and Google, both pretty similar budget-wise for June. I think both had like a 2% uplift or something.
Yeah, and for anyone listening, keep your eyes open for our newsletter, which will drop next week most likely. We now include like regular benchmarks data information in the newsletter, and you can subscribe on LinkedIn if you haven't already. Let's move on to tech of the last quarter. Let's do last quarter actually. I'm going to talk about Made with Intent. Some people listening might have already listened into that episode, some might have missed it. But what about from your side? What have you guys come across that's impressed you that you've liked in the last quarter?
Good questions. I thought we were both going to focus on Made with Intent, so I haven't written anything down there. But I'll have a quick thing off the top of my head.
I like to throw these curveballs at you to see how you'll react in real time, mate. Imagine we're in a client pitch and they've just chucked this question at you, and then we'll come back to Made with Intent and talk about why we like it. Because the reason I ask you is because you and Liam do a lot, and I know Connor as well, do a lot of work with playing around with like apps and tools to see how practical usage and how they might work for clients. I always find it interesting. So maybe we'll come back to it. Let's talk about Made with Intent. Now, stick you up, and then we'll come back to see if there's anything else. Because I've not come across anything else. There's lots of little apps I started to use on a couple of client projects in Shopify that I think are quite cool, but nothing that's made me get overexcited. But Made with Intent. So for those who didn't listen to the episode, it's well worth it. So David Mannheim has got a background in like CRO optimization. He used to found an AG, worked in big agencies. His whole principle was that personalization is only effective if you understand the user's intent within this session which they're visiting. So are they there to buy? How ready are they to buy? Are they there to browse, to find information? And that is linked into the type of product you're selling. It's linked into the marketing channel people are coming from. There are so many different signals that you can use to build up an intent profile. So if somebody's coming from a paid search ad for like buy laptop, pretty high intent. If somebody's coming from a display ad that's probably like lower intent in purchase, when they get on the site, what they do and how they browse, and are they on a PDP? Are they interacting with videos, product image galleries? Are they reading content? You can pick up all these like explicit and implicit signals to build up a picture of how close towards purchase intent a customer is, and then bucket them into segments. So they've built an AI tool that I think it tracks 250 plus signals on site, including like the traffic source stuff and all of the on-page behavioral stuff, to then auto segment people. The AI auto segments them, and they segment them into user buckets, and they don't then execute the personalization strategy. They are basically a data repository and a segmentation tool that then passes that data to engines that can do things like content personalization, product recommendations personalization, even push down into marketing platforms like ESPs, whether it's an Ametri or Adopt Digital, to help you then tailor your triggered campaigns and your flow-based marketing. And for me, that when we sat down, you get those moments when you speak to people, and you go, this tech makes perfect sense within the overall tech stack. And what a lot of product discovery, personalization engines are missing is this level of granularity around understanding user intent to tailor it, rather than just changing what product recommendations, which is often what people do based on the users per browsing and purchasing. So that's my ramble about Made with Intent and I personally think this tool's going to do very well.
Okay, so I thought of a few quick ones off the top of my head, and from just looking at Slack. So I think Novel's something we've been using a little bit recently. So I'd say like the biggest thing that we've been doing over the last 3 months is that loyalty, VIP, first-party data strategy. And Novel's just a really simple addition to a loyalty program where you can essentially have like an app. As an example, it represents going into retail. And we work with them on this, where essentially the goal is, so this was for their Glasgow sample sales, so you could, based on your VIP tier, you could like queue skip, and then you get various other benefits. But the goal is that there'll be a lot more like multi-channel connection with that. And then I've already forgotten the name of it. There's an Blackbird it was. So Blackbird is another one that we're looking at, which is essentially, like when you go into Soho House and you tap in and you literally just tap your phone, walk straight in, and then all the people in Soho House are then alerted to you coming in. Like you can do various things for the data. So that's like another technology we're looking at to like support multi-channel loyalty. And then another one is tyb.xyz. And then I don't know if anyone's seen the kiki.world site, but that's like that's used quite a lot for like loyalty community examples, and that basically powers that. But that looks pretty cool. We're looking at that with a few clients. And then the only other one I think a lot of our clients are using, I'm sure I think they've been on the podcast maybe, I can't remember, and I'm sure you've used it and looked at it as well, is order editing, which I think is basically a shortcut to some really good functionality for like basically reducing cancelled orders, driving AOV, and I think they're introducing some really cool little features to that as well. So quite a lot of our clients are using that now. They're the ones that I thought of very quickly.
Yes, we had them on the podcast. We had the founder on a podcast a few months back. Really impressed by them as well. I've got a client at the moment who we talked about it in Discovery. We're not doing it for phase one launch, but I think what I like about it is the biggest problem with order editing is the stock piece and the fact that when orders are edited after placement, and if they're all edited in ecom, often the orders got down to a certain stage in processing down in the ERP or the WMS, where making changes is an utter nightmare for the warehouse. And then you create potential issues where an order gets edited, but actually the order's been processed and can't be changed in the back office system. So doing it and making sure the order isn't shipped down to the back office systems before it's been properly edited is really smart. So I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'm hoping to work with them in the not too distant future. I love these modern like community social around tyb.xyz. Somebody sat there and thought, oh, we're going to have the coolest domain. Check us out.
A few of that is the XY thing. I'm
looking forward to when we've got a .abcdefgh and all the way through. Let's see who. Maybe we'll be the first. We'll change our podcast domain to something ridiculous. There you go. It's my middle-aged cynicism. Let's talk about Amazon Prime Day. Prime Day week, year. I mean, it's constant, isn't it? Happens. And I transparently tell everyone I really don't like what Amazon stands for in the e-commerce market, but I'm massively respectful of what they've achieved from an e-com growth point of view. But yeah, not overly impressed in terms of their overall impact. But it is what it is, and it's incredibly successful. But the numbers keep blowing my mind. On mobile this year alone, $7 billion, 18% growth year on year, which, given the fact that e-commerce growth has been challenging, is quite massive. But the thing that surprised me the most about it is high ticket items had one of the biggest surges after a sluggish Q1 and Q2. So they, in the data they released, home furniture and appliance category saw a 76 boost in sales. This data from Adobe Analytics. That I find like I'm surprised. Wouldn't have expected this to bounce back. But I guess for a lot of people who've held off purchase on these high ticket items because of cost pressures and economic issues, that suddenly having big deals gives them that freedom to buy that item they've wanted to for a while. But also interested, and this probably links into the next comment, on US Prime Day, discounts are average about 22%, which is up 10% over last year. So obviously people are slashing prices much higher, although I'd imagine quite a bit of this is gamesmanship of prices being increased in advance of Prime Day to be able to then drop them significantly. What have you seen? How much does this impact your customers and their US channels?
To be honest, again, I think we're probably more like our average client is more premium. It doesn't really affect them. The only one thing I was going to say, the home furniture piece, as someone that uses Amazon a lot, it'd be really interesting. And I don't think the right person would be to come on to do this, but it'd be really interesting to do, I have to say, I'm not consumer trends with Amazon, because the stuff that I buy, I will, for a lot of the time, if I buy something online, first thing I'll do is try and find out Amazon. And I'd say nowadays that could be like a much more premium, expensive, or even like just something you wouldn't necessarily expect Amazon to sell. And nowadays they will probably sell it. So that could be like skincare, it could be like, like Nike running clothing, whatever else. And I think it would be interesting with some of those trends to see how the average consumer is using Amazon and whether what they're buying from Amazon is changing as well.
There we go. Open invite to a person who is highly experienced with Amazon selling and the consumer trend side of it to pitch to us to do that. I think I know a couple of people as well. I'm the opposite to you. Maybe it's because I'm a decade older and a miserable old git, but the constant sea of Amazon parcels and Amazon drivers chucking things on doorsteps and Amazon vans blocking narrow lanes in villages. It just really widens me up. But you're right. I mean, they have fundamentally shifted product discovery. I mean, that's why Google was so concerned, starting many years ago about product search moving away from Google and into Amazon, and it becoming the number one product search engine. Okay, let's move on to interesting news. We always like to leave these episodes on cool stuff that's happened. The main one that I thought was quite interesting is that drone delivery is not new. It's been happening. I mean, go to Asia to see where the trends get set, and drone delivery has been happening at an e-commerce level for a while. But in the West, it's obviously taken longer for adoption because there's a really quite tight regulation and compliance needs for it. But it was interesting to see, and this was a post from Martin Newman on LinkedIn that caught my attention. Amazon drones have got FAA approval in the US to fly longer and also beyond visual line of sight. So they were constrained initially to where the operator can see the drone for safety reasons, but now those drones can fly beyond where the operators are, which obviously gives them greater delivery bandwidth. And so quite interesting. So they've done tests where they've flown in the presence of like planes, helicopters, even hot air balloons to demonstrate how the onboard detection systems can automatically avoid danger and not create risk for other people. But they've now got a goal of delivering 500 million packages per year by drone by the end of this decade, which is, I think that's for the US. I find that really interesting. What's your take on, have you been following the drone delivery stories much?
To be honest, I'm quite intrigued as to where it goes. I know, like you say, regions, it's massive. I'm quite intrigued to see where it goes, I guess, but it's not something I'm massively knowledgeable on, to be perfectly honest.
I'm intrigued to see where the environmental angle goes, because there has been so much, and rightly so, focus on sustainability, the impact of supply chain, and specifically logistics and delivery impact on brands' environmental credentials. And depending on what couriers, what fleets, and what logistics you use, that can really screw up your sustainability stuff. And this is the thing, because the question, it's an uncertain potential about reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And there is research claiming that delivery drones are more CO2 efficient than conventional means of transport, but the last research I saw was 21-22, and no benchmark can be done with EVs. Now, obviously, more courier fleets and more last mile options are coming out, which are EV based. No non or very low CO2 emissions. So I think this is a real area where brands who get involved in any distribution services that are using drones need to think carefully about that sustainability policy impact, because they might end up making claims that aren't substantiated. But apart from that, I'm intrigued as well. I'm intrigued to see how secure it is, and how some human beings try and hijack drone delivery to nick the packages, because inevitably with everything becomes an opportunity for nefarious activity. So I'm intrigued to know whether there is going to be a loss rate of hijacked parcels or damaged parcels or failed drones. I'm intrigued to see what the success versus failure rate is.
Drone people, and so I assume they'll have environment to count that.
Well, I imagine there's been a lot of work on the circuitry and the security to prevent the hacking. But with every smart IT team, there are often even smarter hackers out there. I'm also thinking about exactly. I'm also thinking about physical abduction, where people are just basically slingshot it out the sky. So let's watch this space. But it is intriguing because if it offers, I can see for emergency purchases and distressed purchases, if you can guarantee fast delivery into key areas, and also potentially for remote areas that are poorly served by existing infrastructure, the ability, if you can make the economies of scale work on this, to get packages out to more remote areas, and maybe it could even drop. Sometimes you're paying like 20, 30 quid to get a delivery by standardized courier out to a certain remote, like whether it's remote rural areas or islands. If a drone can drop that down, then fantastic.
I feel like this is actually competitive. One of them I've been fascinated is, those little robots. So the two cities I've seen them all like working, and or like people using them at scale, LA, where you see them all over the place. You essentially have a little robot, and then it'll have like 3 drawers in it, and then it'll like go to someone's house, and you just click the drawer and like love like a t-shirt or whatever else in it. And it'd be really interesting to see all of that stuff that we just talked about, the risks. I guess you could probably like gauge some of that off the back of that. And then is Milton Keynes, which I always think is really random, but they're like everywhere in Milton Keynes. But yeah, it'd be interesting. That again, it'd be really interesting to see some like data and like learnings from like the rollout of those things.
I just, in my head then, I had this lovely thought, like the robots went rogue and decided that they wanted to go to Milton Keynes, and no one else knows about it. They just got up and their hive intelligence connected when they went, lads, let's go to Milton Keynes. It's got loads of roundabouts. It's a great place. Yeah, interesting. I would be really freaked out if I opened the door and there was a robot there speaking to me, or just with a drawer to open. Maybe because I grew up with Terminator, I just like distrusted these machines. What else has been happening? Do you know what I thought was really interesting is so Grebben, who are one of our sponsors, they launched 8 months ago an e-commerce design subscription, and I've not seen anyone else do this. Maybe there are, but I've not seen any other agencies where instead of like the standardized e-commerce design technical agency where it's okay, we've got a retainer, and that retainer is generally spent on development, and there'll be some design elements as part of that. Specifically a design subscription to get people to focus on creativity and art direction. And often these are the skills that are lacking in brands. Like they might be very good at overall branding, but not necessarily good at creative and art direction in a digital environment. So you can end up with some really cool ideas, not perfectly executed. And I thought that was really interesting. So separating design from development, again, encouraging people to focus more on that creative process, which then feeds down into the development cycles. And they found that that's grown really well. And they've got some big brands on that services. And I wouldn't be surprised to see other agencies follow suit.
I think, and we've got a couple of clients that use that service, and I think positioning is really clever. I would say one trend that we've seen, it's spending a lot of design resources 2 years ago, content and creative in general, like more clients are building in studios in-house, hiring like photographers, art directors, etc. So I think, and then less on development. So I think overall that's really good. Grebben have like, I think over 60 designers, but as full-time staff. So I think it's super smart for them as well. And I think it makes complete sense. And the other thing that I would say in our client teams is even the clients that got the most creatives in-house, and they're always bottlenecks. So having a retainer like that where you've got a set number of hours, and those hours can be used on building content or art direction or landing page design or whatever. I think makes sense. It's also very affordable as well. So I was impressed by it as well.
Yeah, I think it's great because it brings different perspectives and it brings broader experience across a large number of clients. But also that ability to pilot something or to iterate really quickly on a new concept where you don't want to distract, as you say, you don't want to distract your day-to-day work and people are busy, but you want to outsource and go, right, there's a couple of days work to come up with some concepts to pitch back that can then hopefully push for the internal prioritization. Yeah, I think it's really smart as well. Anyone wants to find out more, just reach out to Anton on the team at Grebben. You can reach out to them on Anton Johansson at LinkedIn. Other interesting news. So Card Factory, and this isn't a new model, but collabs between different businesses that are non-competitive to try and open up different distribution channels and routes to market. So Card Factory's partnered with Just Eat for on-demand delivery of like about 200 products, I think was. They're piloting from 19 locations, which I think is smart because obviously Just Eat has got the infrastructure and it's got the audience, and it gives Just Eat the ability to sell other products and get commissions, and it gives Card Factory potentially reach to new audiences. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting area in general. Like Deliveroo have obviously done a lot of new categories and like activation for brands and stuff. So yeah, I think that will just continue to get better and better. And I was thinking earlier about Just Eat because I guess I would see that as like being quite behind Deliveroo, but I think that's just because I live in London. And actually, I guess Just Eat's got a far broader, like they're not just in major cities basically. But it'd be interesting to see because I was thinking about Just Eat as maybe like not the blockbuster, but as the business that have maybe, you know, not invested as much in tech and like branding, marketing, and even like their positioning, I guess, like if they were to go broader, like Just Eat, like the brand. But equally, I do think they've got loads of potential because they've got that, like, some of those like more rural areas, etc. And obviously, I think that'd be interesting. Although the other day, I did need a t-shirt, and I went on to Deliveroo thinking I'd be able to get a t-shirt within an hour, and there was nowhere to sell a t-shirt, which I was very disappointed by. But I think over time, hopefully, that will change.
It's a hard life you live, mate, isn't it? It's the challenges you face.
Disorganized life, and as always, I found myself in a situation where I'd done or like needed something quick because I wasn't organized. My next one was the Dusseldorf flagship store opening for Hugo Boss. So this is stolen from Connor from my team, and I do tend to steal quite a lot from him, so I will give him a shout out. But basically, they opened a new flagship. And there's some really cool tech. So like Hugo Boss, I would say are one of like the global leaders with their loyalty program. There's like loads of really cool stuff around it. There's a lot of people talk about like the fact that it's all built with like Web3 technologies, and you've got things like quite innovative little benefits. Like I think were the first to do receiptless returns for like a certain tier of loyalty. There's a lot of really cool multi-channel stuff. And the Dusseldorf store has things like a little VIP lounge where if you're a certain tier of loyalty, you can go in there and get a drink. They've also got smart fitting rooms, which I think are tied to an account as well, which is pretty cool. And then they've kind of built in various like little personalization features. And again, all the data is multi-channel. So I think that's really cool. And I think I've seen there's like quite a lot of brands trying to do this stuff at the moment, and some of our clients are trying to roll out retail stores and have this kind of like connectivity with online. But I think it's really impressive that Hugo Boss are doing it at their scale, and they seem to be quite early to a lot of the technologies themselves. So I was quite impressed by that.
Sounds like we need to tap up the person who runs the Hugo Boss loyalty side to get the inside track. And if you're listening, do give us a nod. You've got a comment about Temu and Shein. Is it Shein?
Yeah, basically. I thought this was interesting. So Shein sort of essentially suing Temu due to the fact that they have so many countries and unique countries. Shein product. But one thing I would say is that a number of our clients that have fallen victim to this. So essentially, Temu will create almost identical products without the branding, and the biggest impact is actually on Google Ads. So essentially, sell a very famous polo shirt. They will get, they'll have a lot of prominence within the search ads and, more importantly, Google Shopping, and they'll essentially have a very similar product for 15% of the price, and it drives up the CPCs, and obviously steals demand away from the brand. But yeah, I must admit, and we had one client that started a lawsuit with them, and I do think that it's particularly bad, basically, how they do it. And there's a lot of risk to brands, and obviously additional costs if they're raising the costs of the auction. So I'd be interested to see where this goes, but I think there'll be a lot more of this.
Yeah, interesting. And final one that I'm going to pull out, mate, I know you wouldn't say it yourself, but Vivant's Pulse event, which for me is still one of the best events of the year, if not the best for e-commerce, and a lot of people will agree on this. You're going to New York, you're expanding, you're going for global domination. Like, talk people through it. Well, I can guess why New York, but how's this come about this year?
Yeah, so I mean, I go to New York, which is probably a big part of it. But to be honest, like, a lot of it's or Josh Hobson. So he's, super ambitious about the event and like how we can keep pushing it. And we've got a lot of clients in New York, and a lot of the brands that we would want to work with are in New York. And that's it really, to be honest. And relatively easy to get there. So it'll be much smaller than the London one. So the London one, hopefully, will be 1,000 people this year. It'll be 2 days. And then the New York one will be a single day. It'll probably be 300 people. To be honest, I just think there's an opportunity to build good content-focused events. And I don't think we plan to grow it astronomically, but we do think that the content and the event is relevant to New York, basically.
I think from having gone from around 80 to 100 in the first year to 800 plus in the third year and going to 1,000 next year, I think you've done pretty well at growing it massively. It's amazing. Do you know what? You're going to be like Amazon Prime. You're going to go from a day to a week. So soon Pulse is going to be all year long, every day.
Yeah, exactly. Shopify.
But no, it's amazing. I'm looking forward to it because I always come to these because you always rope me into doing stuff. And anyone else who follows our podcast, keep your ears open for it. For those who are our US listeners who we obviously don't get to see face to face, well, here's the chance. Go and meet Paul in person. You can grill him, ask him lots of annoying questions. He loves it. Right, that.
So then this year as well.
Yeah, exactly. We'll work out how to do a live one. Excellent. Well, that we could ramble on indefinitely. I think you probably get the impression we're very good at rambling. But that brings us to the end. Those are the key things you want to do on our update. Hope it's been interesting. If there's any really exciting e-com stories and news that you've stumbled across that you think people should know about, do drop us a line when we post on LinkedIn. Add it to the comments. We'd love to hear about it because we can't keep our eye on everything. And do make sure you're following Inside Commerce on LinkedIn and subscribe to our newsletter. Thanks very much, everybody. You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-com strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.